The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this episode is Cues of the Force, Quantums of the Force. No, it's Questions of the Force. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. I've got answers for the quantums, the questions, the quantums, all of the names, the Q names I'm making up, apparently. Good stuff here today. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, we got some really fun and really different questions today. So we are eager to get to the Qs so we can discover our own As. We want to let you know, as always, that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible, another A. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Very, very soon, we're talking about the book that we've been recommending for an extremely long time. That's Padawan by Kirsten White. So I decided, why not go to my bookshelf, Ken, and see what other books we are due to read. So we were also recommending Path to Deceit by Tessa Gratton and Justina Ireland. It is the new, I'm abusing that word, the newish adventure in the High Republic Publishing Initiative. So if you want to check out Padawan or Path to Deceit, you can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. There are so many Qs and so many As, and we're up to another A, Ken, and that is our new segment called Ask.
That's right. The Ask. Boom, boom. Get some Justin Hayward, Moody Blues doing that theme song apparently in my head there. Yeah, we got a big ask. It's a big ask. We understand it's a big ask because, hey, YouTube isn't for everyone, but we are building up our YouTube channel after years of having it. I know a lot of people, you'd always write us, hey, how about some more stuff on YouTube? Well, that is coming. We've been rebroadcasting podcast episodes and having the fun live Q&As. We are continuing to do that, but we're asking, hey, maybe would you consider heading over to our YouTube channel, give us a subscription, hit that sub button, hit that bell so you get the notifications and never miss a ForceCenter video because more cool things are coming to the channel in 2023. And you can also take a look at the live Q&As maybe that you missed. Go back and check the in memoriams or databank brawls or a fun way to check the old ones there. We got the great animated one from Brian Ward. It's on the channel as well. A lot is there for you now, but more things are on the way. We are asking your help to get to 7,000 subscribers. We're about 6,650 right now at the time of this recording. So you guys have stepped up. Our numbers are growing. We really appreciate it. So that is our ask. Dun dun.
Yeah, and we will have our live Q&A on YouTube with some specific announcements about what is coming, and that is Friday, right? This Friday, December 17th. Did I do that right? No, I didn't. That's the wrong day. Friday, December 16th, 4 p.m. Pacific. You can also watch it the next day, but join us live Friday, December 16th, 4 p.m. I'm keeping track of too many things, Ken.
Oh, man, you know, you and I are looking at our calendar for 2023, and I have that mindset of that's next year, but next year is really 2 weeks away or so. So, yeah.
Yes, we are like a blink away from heading to London for Star Wars Celebration. Lots of exciting things coming in 2023, but let's look at our excitement in the moment, the way Qui-Gon would want us to, here, now. We have 2 questions from Twitter and 2 from our patrons on Patreon. We go first to Twitter and Jonathan Steelflex. I write down the names and sometimes I don't fully take them in. Steelflex, that's great. Jonathan says, hey there all, do you believe we will be seeing a live action creation of a lightsaber? I know we have seen Luke tinkering with his hilt in deleted scenes from Return of the Jedi and in the 2002 Clone Wars series, as well as the Cartoon Network Disney Clone Wars. But what about live action? If so, where? This is a great question because I love lightsabers. I love lightsaber building. So I'm excited to hear if you're excited, Ken, and where you think it might happen live action.
I'm very excited. This is a great question, Jonathan Steelflex. I love a last name that could be a username online or could be an actual name. Steelflex. That's powerful. Yeah. And when you stop and think about it, I'm truly surprised we haven't seen a live action creation of a lightsaber yet. You know, I get Mando. Maybe it's not necessarily the place. Maybe Grogu could have. Maybe Grogu still can. But I'm even including the movies in that in this modern era. And also, by the way, I thought about this too. I also kind of mean the prequels. Like, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
We didn't spend time with that. Clearly, George had some thoughts about it. Thus, the stories that emerge in the Clone Wars a few years later. So that's a good thing there. What's your thoughts on it not being in the prequels?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I feel like there's so much world building that Lucas was interested in, which is where Clone Wars, comes from, that didn't make it in. But like the sort of the lightsaber, there's so much in the prequels about lightsaber loss. Maybe it's because the prequels are ultimately a tragedy that is focusing only on lightsaber loss and not lightsaber creation. Because we have Kenobi losing his first blade in The Phantom Menace. We have Kenobi making a big deal to Anakin about the weapon is your life, and Anakin's first blade getting chopped in half. But yeah, there's no and we'll go on a journey or even really acknowledgement of creation. So I think that I'm gonna put that in the category of it's one of the things that builds tragedy. All loss, no creation in the prequels.
That's a great way to look at it there. As far as where I think it might happen, I mean, you got some, I guess, obvious answers here. Ahsoka, maybe she already has blades, but there's an opportunity, rebuilding, tinkering. Who else along her path might need a blade? That's the spot. But I'm interested in the Acolyte, right? Because it's very interesting to see the dark side version of that. We know about bleeding the blade now, all that kind of stuff. But you also have a character described as a former Padawan, kind of returning to the fold, whether that's the Jedi Order or not, whether they left the Jedi Order or not. I know there's different ways to take that description, and just kind of seeing maybe they have to rebuild one or fix the one they had, or maybe they left one. I love those two spots as locations, and maybe shows and movies that we have yet to even hear about or dream about. And what I love, though, is that thanks to some of the animated shows that Jonathan's mentioned and more updated takes in the books and comics in this modern era, the building of a lightsaber has real added meaning for me as a fan. You very much understood from Return of the Jedi that Luke building his own meant a lot. In fact, we did that ForceCenter scene by scene of that great catwalk conversation, Return of the Jedi, deleted scene or not. You knew it was important. But even as a kid, I don't know about you, Joseph, but I took it much more. And I know you've always been kind of keen about the Jedi and Jedi lore, and I was more interested about the stormtroopers falling off of high places, I guess. But so maybe it's my journey. But even as a kid, I took it much more that the trial and the importance of Luke building his lightsaber was that he knew how to shop for parts and make it work. Not the personality, not the things that kind of emerge later. Where now the Kyber crystal means more to the story and to me now as a fan. And I have a better understanding of the individual nature of the process in the blade. So all that to say, I would love to see it explored in a show like The Acolyte. That's my choice, but we'll see where it's coming. And I think it will come.
Yeah, I think it will come eventually because it is so rich. Everything that's been set up in the animated side and the publishing side, from comics to books, is so rich. And I think it's because of exactly what you're talking about. It's all storytelling about who the character is. It's fun world building, right? But everything from finding your Kyber during the era of Ilum being the Jedi or other Force users' primary location, and knowing there's now even with Andor, like, what exactly is a Sky Kyber? How is that different? Is it different? But then learning the physical construction, getting the materials, going to, is this an era, post the Galactic Civil War where, hey, Ilum's not a place to get Kyber crystals these days. Where do you get them? And it's so much about testing the character of who they are, and then the bleeding of them, and even the ritual that Vader is sort of sent on to find a Kyber to take from a Jedi. All the stories that we do have in animation and publishing are revealing of the character in the world. So that's what's so exciting about it. And yeah, I think I love that deleted scene. It lived of Luke. I'm always amused because the captions when he's just playing with it a little bit say twittering. So it looks like Luke's kind of adjusting maybe the length of his lightsaber blade and posting a witty comment on Star Wars social media at the same time, maybe. But yeah, I always love the lightsaber stuff like you're talking about. When I first got to really absorb Vader saying, so you've constructed a new lightsaber, your powers are complete. It was so cool, and I was so happy for Luke, and I kind of didn't get what it meant. Like, my dad was, a car guy, and he could fix things and make things. So I think I kind of took it as like, wow, you can build a bench.
Right.
You finished woodshop class. You are powerful. Like, that's the way I took it. And then as I got older, it's like, what is that about? And I remember somebody gave me the visual dictionary. I'm sure it's somewhere in the expanded universe books and that. But in that very first visual dictionary, it shows the kyber crystal and says you can only place the crystal in the right place with the Force. And I was just over the moon. It's like, that's it. That's the answer to that Vader line, that it's not, hey, nothing against great craftspersonship of being able to build things, right?
Right.
But that idea that it is something that takes focus and talent to do as a Jedi. It takes a relationship with the Force to place it, to bleed it, to become one with it, to forge this, that there's something kind of larger and mystical about it, other than, wow, you found all the right metals and you put them together in the right order. Good job.
Good job, you tinkered. I love that in 1983, you said you were really happy for Luke. Like, good job, Luke. Dad has it. He might kill you with it, but good job.
Well, he does just get his everything handed to him in Empire Strikes Back. And I was just rooting for Luke. And at the time, I was so young and I didn't understand how media worked. I'd fight with my brothers. Like, I think Luke's going to figure it out. I think he's going to become a Jedi. And my brother would be like, nah, he doesn't have what it takes. Like, from an adult perspective, of course he's going to evolve. But we're just watching it like it's real life, and you don't know if your friend's going to do good at kickball that day. In the same way, I was like, is Luke going to be a Jedi? I don't know.
See, this is fascinating, because this is a separate conversation. Sorry, Jonathan, never go to another side. I love Star Wars in context of the time of, you got 3 years to wait, and so this, when Luke shows up dressed in all black and Return of the Jedi, you don't know. You and your brother might be nudging you in the theater, going, "Told you."
I think I've mentioned this before. He ordered the storybook like months in advance, and it showed up at school. I don't know why I didn't have school. He called me from school because he read like the first act and then stopped himself. And he was like, "Luke Skywalker is a Jedi." He told me over the phone. I was like, "Yeah, that's amazing." Anyway.
That's fantastic. Oh, I love that.
Spent a lot of time rooting for Luke in his lightsaber twittering.
As you should. And all this to say, like, I don't think it wasn't that this one wasn't present. Some of the bigger themes around lightsabers weren't present even in Star Wars: A New Hope when Kenobi's handing that blade over, or Jedi. Just the perspective of number one, you and I are kids, but of different era and how you take things in. I love how deep it is, because it just makes so much sense. This is the weapon of a Jedi. This is what you would expect from what they mean.
Yeah, and I just rewatched that Trials of the Darksaber episode. With Kanan teaching Sabine to use the Darksaber, and that stuff about like there's a bond with the kyber crystal, and the energy is kind of coming from you, and it's directing through the kyber crystal. It's all about directing energy, and like it's much more spiritual ideas are it's so interesting. And I think all the modern storytelling of constructing or bleeding lightsabers and finding kybers all taps into that. So I think there could be some great storytelling with it. A couple of places that I think it could pop up. I mean, in a way, I feel like maybe we've crossed that bridge with Grogu, but you never know. I got an image of Grogu making a light whip, like the character from the High Republic, Nestor Rowe, or Grogu making just everybody had those jokes when Kylo's blade was first revealed of like, it ignites and there's 18 different blades. There's something about Grogu just makes like the most aggressive blade possible. It cracks me up.
With whatever version of Grogu, like the Grogu that eats frogs, steals eggs and cookies. I don't know if I want him to have a light whip. That's not what I want. Ow! Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, the Grogu who helps cranky Rancors take a nap. He might be more responsible with light whips. Skeleton Crew, I'm intrigued by just this kind of big, quick picture question of will any of the kids be Force sensitive? Is that something the show is interested in exploring? Of what is it to be discovering? You're a teen and you're kind of discovering you're Force sensitive and you don't really know where to go or what to do with that. That's a story that's been told a lot in Star Wars, so not necessarily in that era. So that could be a place for it. But I think the biggest one is Ahsoka. There was that footage that we were lucky to see at Star Wars Celebration that showed a flash of Professor Huyang, I believe, or a very similar robot. The robot that is very, very, very old and helps younglings with building their lightsabers after they've got their kyber crystals. So I think Filoni, being obviously involved in the Gathering arc, has a real interest in that. He's been so invested in the meaning of Ahsoka's different blades. So the idea of her needing a new one, if Ahsoka and Sabine are indeed searching for Ezra, if Ezra needs a new one, if they find Ezra and he's like, great, I've been training 5 kids, Yeah. I think there's a lot of interesting possibilities, and the presence of Huyang is really interesting to me.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna be honest. I actually totally forgot that. That's a great reminder. It's a good spot.
Yeah, so I'll hold out hope, but I'll accept if it isn't there. Any final thoughts on this one?
No, lots of process and think. This is a great question to start us off because so much to it.
I was so focused on the light side. I was so focused on seeing somebody maybe in a different era without the guidance, trying to figure out, how do I get a kyber crystal? How do I put this together? I hadn't thought about the acolyte, and there's a part of me that is like, I'm equally excited to see the bleeding ritual in live action storytelling, and I think that's something that could be in the acolyte.
It is visceral in the comics with Vader. It's some of my favorite stuff from back in the day. So yeah, that could be good.
Yeah, and in Rise of Kylo Ren. That's great stuff. We're going to move on to our next question from Twitter and from Ross Squatch. Ross says, your crew talks about putting on a Star Wars property just to have something on in the background. What is a Disney-era non-movie product that you don't find yourself rewatching, even as background noise? # watch all, retain none. Love the show, and thank you all for the hard work. Thank you, Ross, for the fun question. I think we should start out with clarification. I think sometimes we're all very aligned, you and Jennifer and I, and then every once in a while there's something we're not as aligned on. You watch Star Wars for background stuff, right? And that I'm almost jealous. I would like to, but I can't. I have a hard time. I have friends who watch movies in the background and they're half having a conversation and they half tune in for their favorite line. Just like, I can't do that. I want to be all in when I'm watching something narrative. Every once in a while, like my wife is, knitting, and usually that's fine. But every once in a while I'm like, this isn't a knitting show. I need my entire attention. So I struggle with background watching, but it's a thing for you. So I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, no, what's interesting, the kind of reverse, this is only emerged recently, is when it comes to like music and like just a playlist of songs or something like that, I used to be able to put that on and just have that in the background while I work. Now I can't. Not just because I have a cheap plug music show, Pop Rock and Radio on Mixcloud, so I'm picking out, scouting out songs, but I find it really, I just can't concentrate on the two. When I'm like writing or anything, like I have that silent, but so that's interesting, almost the reverse. As far as just watching in the background, I think it's just such comfort. It's such, I especially it's weird because I came from a movie news kind of collider and Screen Junkies and schmoes and all that kind of stuff. And I think people think it's a running bit with me, but I just don't sit down and watch a lot of movies and shows. I just really don't. So it's about comfort with me. And so it's like, put on the Lord of the Rings. I sometimes do sit and watch all 4 hours of a director's cut. Other times it's like, great, now I can do some work because Frodo's just doing his thing and I can check in. And it's like a little comfort and familiarity. What it sounds cheesy. I know this sounds cheesy, but it's like hanging out with friends. Like Luke, Leia, and Han are here. Chewie's here. I'm good. I can get my stuff done on Saturday. I think that's where it starts as far as that. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think maybe the thing that I can relate to the most is I love listening to audio to go to bed, in particular old radio shows. There's a couple of Doctor Who audios, and like, I'd put on my Friends. I think there's a time in high school, I think 10th grade, I mostly fell asleep to a restaurant at the end of the universe.
Good stuff.
So I do that sometimes for audio, but there's something about just the visual medium that's not the same for me. But I totally get that, just that having your friends there with you, kind of being immersed in having a world around you that is familiar and joyful. Yeah.
But as far as this question from Ross about what Disney or non-movie products. So I'm assuming that we're talking Star Wars, right? I don't have the full Disney Plus catalog to choose from here, right? That you don't find yourself rewatching. This is going to be weird. I don't rewatch The Last Jedi a lot anymore. One, I think it does work on some levels that it is at times too deep to just have on the background, where I am like you. I want to sit and take it in. I'm always convinced I've missed some corner of the theme I want to explore more, right? Last Jedi has continued to be very rewarding in terms of life lessons and what it does for Star Wars. But if I'm scrolling, and I know Ross said non-movie product, but I'm starting here because I'll scroll and I'll scroll past it. It's really weird. I found myself, I haven't watched it in full in a little bit. So I'll start there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a heavy film. There are moments of joy and fist pumping, but it is much like Empire. It is learning your lessons and surviving is the victory, So it isn't a fist pumping, let me watch that Ewok, drum on those helmets,
Yeah. Well, which is why Rise of Skywalker is a movie it's a background movie, but it's a movie I sit and watch from start to finish a lot. And I have trouble leaving that one on the background. Sometimes it's like, I just want to hear Bolio say "win the war." I'll just put that on, and then I've watched the whole movie. I think a little bit. There's sometimes I'm like, I want to see Tally Lyncher and the A-Wings take. Oh, that's a defeat. That's pew pew. Ooh, like it's yeah. So there's a lot going on there. But as far as non-movie product, that's a tough one because it might be. Looking at the shows, like, I don't know. I feel like I almost feel like I'm slagging on the shows now, but like Clone Wars, I don't have it on the background. I love Clone Wars Report going in, but I don't put those ones on a lot. I'll just have that going on. If that makes sense. I don't know if that answered your question exactly, Ross, but that's where I go.
Yeah. I think for me, I have tried to have some Star Wars on the background in the Disney era. They have, on Disney Plus, they've released that Galaxy of Sounds, which is like the sort of the themed episodes. Mm-hmm. They have the biomes where you just fly over. They have the vehicle fly-throughs. I've tried to put those on in the background to have that just the warm blanket of Star Wars. I've tried to put that on when I'm exercising in my living room, during the cycles where I've been writing a lot of those forward letters, or sometimes I just need to clean the apartment. But even those, Ken, I end up sitting down like, what if I miss something while we're flying over Hoth?
Yeah.
I'm obsessive. I really want to rewatch Obi-Wan. I want to rewatch Book of Boba Fett. I want to rewatch Mando season 2.
Yeah.
I deeply, deeply want to rewatch Obi-Wan, and I could just watch an episode a day at lunch, but I haven't yet. Because I want to see what it's like if you watch it in a short, compacted time with your entire whole focus. So Obi-Wan is almost like the total opposite end of what Ross is asking. I think for me, if the Star Wars that I definitely do want to rewatch, but I probably feel the least pull right now is Star Wars Resistance. Absolutely loved everything that it had to offer. It is beautiful. There are great Star Wars themes. But I think for me, it's like I wanted it to connect even more with the sequel trilogy. I wanted the show itself to blossom into being sort of as tied to everything as the Clone Wars and Rebels are. And I think there's nothing about Resistance that I dislike. Resistance is exactly what it tells you it is, and it does it extremely well, and it's very enjoyable. But I think I have this little pang where like, I wish that the sequel era had that animated show that's that kind of perfect match, the way Clone Wars is for the prequels and Rebels is for the OT.
I really agree with that. And as someone who really enjoyed a lot of what Resistance was doing and was doing a rewatch of that too recently before we started the Clone Wars too. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I can feel that. I can get you. Dolza, Dance. Dolza gets you.
But maybe I should put that on in the background because it is really fun and I do like the characters and it does look beautiful. So maybe I'll give Resistance a try.
I want to put one that I do watch a lot in the background and it's just as comfortable. It's Empire of Dreams. There's just some about it. I love docs and everything like that. And I love docs. There's a lot of documentaries and docuseries that don't use narrators anymore. And I get it. It's kind of the sign of the times. And you can tell fascinating stories versus via documentaries without a narrator. But there's just something about hearing that guy's voice saying 20th Century Fox, and the way it's just comforting. And just hearing that story, Alan Ladd Jr., rest in peace, is the most unintentional ASMR voice in the history of the world. It's just relaxing to hear his story. And even though it's a story of Lucasfilm told through the eyes of Lucas and Lucasfilm, at times there's honest parts in there, but other times it's fascinating to hear the different versions. The Han I know stuff is not 100% true to the Doc's tale, but you're there for it. It's fascinating. And I just love having that on, and I check in with that.
I think about that one a lot. There's so many clips. I love when somebody's interviewing Harrison Ford and asking him like what it meant of Star Wars' success, and he rubs his hands together. He's like, great, now we can get to work. I love that.
He's got that early 2000s Harrison haircut during it.
Yep. And that it's just endlessly fascinating that it is a documentary made by Lucas. So some of the familiar conflicts that we're familiar with definitely have a Lucas's take perspective. Mm-hmm. But then also he's cast himself as Vader, and it's like this victory lap where he's also like, it happened to me. Yeah. Yes. The same way Anakin fell, I fell. Yeah. But also I'm really proud of this. It's fascinating that a person would choose to do that and make that statement, you know? Yeah, Empire Dreams is one of my favorites. It's just I always do the Kasdan. I wanted Han to die. I heard a lot of people do that one too. It's classic. But in Irving Kershner's, I had smooching. That's all I had. That whole bit and the tale. Then you find out the truth, the more truer tale of the Han I know stuff. They cut Carrie out of that decision making, and she was rightfully pissed and confronted both of them. There's a lot more to it that's on tape. That didn't make that doc, but that becomes the story. I just said action, and Harrison, go with what your instincts. That's not exactly what happened, but it's the legend, and it's what it is there. So it's fascinating. Yeah. Anyway, we'll have to do a full episode sometime on Empire Dreams, because man, we love that. Anyway, look at us struggling, Ross, to tell you what we don't watch, because we watch it all. We watch it all, and then when we don't watch it, we spend a bunch of time feeling bad that we aren't watching it. I guess that's why we do this podcast. All right. Any final thoughts, Ken? No, I'm going to go watch Empire Dreams right now. And I'm going to go watch Resistance. It'll be great. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with our questions from our patrons on Patreon. Back in a moment. And we are back with more Cues of the Force. We're going to questions from our patrons on Patreon. We go first to Jay. Jay says, as a viewer of this space fantasy, we can easily take droid emotions like 3PO's anxiety or B2's depression as storytelling devices. But in the reality of Star Wars, what is the purpose of such extreme negativity in a droid? Programming them to be upbeat and cheerful seems the goal in a product designed to make sentient life easier, but why bake such harsh human psychology into a glorified vacuum? Is it a learned behavior, part of some mega processing chip designed to create a bond between the organic and the robotic? Even still, I can see a full return line at Droids R Us of folks requesting a more boring model. Note, none of this is meant to be disrespectful to droids. I love them. Just a thought experiment. Smiley face. Jay, thanks for the smiley face and the droid investigation. This is a really, really fun idea. And I think I'm sure that there have been many stabs taken at it in many various lines here or there in books, comics, all sorts of things. I don't think there is any one like very clear agreed upon, this is how droids get made, this is why they have personalities. Big picture answer. I'm sure there's lots of little ideas. I'm sure Pablo Hidalgo has flipped many thoughts into various small fonts of visual dictionaries, but I kind of approach this as it's one of the fun questions of Star Wars. I want to start there, Ken. Do you feel like there is an answer, or do you feel like this is one of those fun discussion points of Star Wars? In all my years of watching Star Wars, I don't feel as though I know that there is one answer, and I kind of don't want there to be, but this is a wonderful question. I've said before, my relationships with droids has changed over the years, and I think Jay's right that we just had a 3PO, that's his character, that's what he is, and it's needed for the story, but it's also very much of the Star Wars saga. So I think it's a absolutely fun question to explore, because I hadn't spent a lot of time on it. Yeah, no, I think it's a great question to explore, and I agree. As viewers, it can be storytelling devices, but I also think it's there's this element of comedy to it, right? Because anytime that we put human attributes onto something that is not human, there is an element of comedy, right? We feel that way with the animal characters like Rocket Raccoon, right? We feel that with Garfield, with, if you put a googly eyes on a melon and suddenly give it human properties. There's this element of comedy because I think it's by separating it from ourselves, we can kind of look at our own foibles and go, why? Yeah. Almost exactly what Jay is asking about the actual in Galaxy answers. I think a lot of it is there for storytelling device, but also to just sort of facilitate through this light touch of comedy, this deep philosophical question of why are we like that? Why do we obsess on those things? Is it learned behavior, or is it baked into us? Is that just who I am, or can I choose to have a better attitude today? All those kind of stuff, I think, is reflected in that's what's charming about the droids from the beginning.
Yeah. First of all, I put a note down here. This question is absolutely a pro Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy Marvin the Paranoid Android.
Absolutely.
I think Adams was playing not only the Star Wars of it all, but just space robots in general. So fascinating. You and I thought of, I think we're in the same ballpark where, in terms of like how, maybe there's official answers out there, but why? There's a little bit of this, looking at the mega processing chip that is, possibly feeding off the world around it. You got the tech seems like is a little AI component to it. So there's a little bit of a learned behavior part where it made me think, and I think you were touching on some of the same stuff there. Perhaps it is our behaviors that are programming them, and these droids on a general scale are mirrors. And maybe we need to look at ourselves to ask why they're asking these questions and acting like this.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really great, and I think that there is this big question of nature and nurture, particularly when in the era that I was going to college and taking a lot of social sciences, that term was everywhere. And I think my own opinion is that in human reality, it's some of both. Some stuff is DNA, some stuff is totally our environment. And I kind of think that's just I think that's it with the droids too. I think some of the emotions that we see from droids that make them funny, that make them charming, that make them feel real, anxiety, depression, anger, loneliness, they're kind of wrestling with them in the same way that the human characters are, of like, they're bad in abundance. They're bad if they're entirely limiting your choices, but they're also just reality, right? They exist and they need to be, dealt with. I like the idea that from a sort of a nature perspective of, did somebody code 3PO to be just absolutely neurotic,
Yeah.
I have the headcanon. I like the idea that they're programmed for learning and adaptation. You want them to learn how to do their skills, right? Maybe an emotion is baked in, but it can't be controlled. Like this idea that maybe, I know that's kind of changed over the years of whether Anakin built 3PO and now it's more he reassembled him. Where every 3PO's programming started out, right? That somebody's like, well, a protocol droid is supposed to be very concerned about etiquette.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that clearly tipped over into 3PO is very, very, very concerned about etiquette and absolutely everything else. He's like, I see. My programming is be concerned. Yeah. So I like the idea that it could start as a sensible programming idea, but then grow and adapt, in this sort of Star Wars vision that, what is organic and sentient can't be contained.
No, I love that. Especially with 3PO. That would make sense, right? Well, my job, my task is to worry about the rules.
Exactly.
Worry is baked into me.
Han, I have been programmed to despise Han Solo's approach to life. Yeah.
And just the way, technology work in this galaxy far, far away, it just makes sense that even if Treadwell droid started out just thinking about ones and zeros. It's going to adapt and learn. And that's one of the things, there's a lot of conversation to have maybe around L3 and how L3 came off and some of the decisions made. I understand that. And we've had those discussions and will again. But I personally love L3. Number one, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I think it's great to have her in Star Wars. But two, I told you, I was one of the ones who just kind of thought, yeah, R2's got a personality. 3PO's fun and kind of annoying. I don't buy a lot of figures of him. And here's L3 to make me ask some questions about what I thought about Droid. It was effective on me. And I know there's bigger real world issues around some of the decisions. But I listened to L3 when L3 was talking because it just was interesting. It was little bit of a different take for me of hey, you built us, you put us here. And then after that, maybe you can't control it as much as you think. And maybe you got to look at this differently.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think that there is almost like Douglas Adams pulls it out and makes it explicit, makes it a joke that, certain robots have just, this devastating, programming, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of in there in Star Wars that like whatever the intention was, they roll off the line with really different attitudes. And so we see some characters sort of wrestle with the like, okay, if they really are unique, if they really do have personalities, and their personalities grow and change in response to their experiences, if we don't wipe them, that kind of leads us to an L3 perspective that they aren't actually different. They are, on some level, luminous beings, I guess. We can get into that larger conversation. But I love that that Star Wars does spend some time with the nurture part of the equation of like experiences change droids, and if you don't wipe them, that makes a difference, right? Like that said specifically about like R2 of just like he hasn't been reset at all, so these are all his life experiences making him like that. We get the same vibe with Chopper. I think that's there with B2. Some of the droids with the most personality are the ones who've just seen a lot, experienced a lot. I don't think B2 was as, bummed out or needy when he was getting what he needed, which was to please his family that he loved by hauling the bleep out of things. He did a great job. And right at the end of the day, it's like, you hauled the hell out of that B2. And he went to his little charging bed for a much shorter time, proud of himself. And then things changed. Life changed. He's going through a midlife crisis, right? I mean,
totally. Yeah. Love it. Yeah.
So I think the other part of this for me is like, I think there's a nature element where they come off the line with a little bit of maybe an intended personality, but it grows, it changes based on their experiences. And I think it's a really interesting question that Jay raises about, emotional qualities, positive, negative. Wouldn't you want a droid who's just got a really good attitude? When I think about emotions we call negative, it's because what are they gonna lead us to? What are they gonna stop us from doing that we want to do? And I love that story with 3PO in particular, right? 3PO is this great source of comedy for being incredibly true to his programming, concerned about everything. And then it's that question of, is that going to stop 3PO from doing what 3PO truly wants to do? And that's what's so beautiful about his story in Rise of Skywalker, right? Of like, he knows he has to do this. This is terrifying. This is the kind of thing that for years he's been yelling at other people to turn around and run away, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't let his anxiety stop him from making the choice that he truly wants to in Rise of Skywalker. And I feel like that's such a tribute to 3PO and to droids.
I think it is. Look, in my many rewatches of Rise of Skywalker, which I've done recently, it's one of the things I will obviously defend that film stand on that hill. But that Rey moment where she's like, no one knows the odds more than you. It's a beautiful moment for me as a Star Wars fan. This droid, his whole existence, whether he's been, rebooted and put new memories put in and wiped clean, all the stuff, that's kind of a human thing, right? You're going to doubt yourself if everyone's been treating you a certain way, I think. And to have one person, even just one person, put a belief in you and say who you are is what we need right now. Oh, it's a powerful moment for 3PO and for us for 42 plus years at the time of the movie, living with this droid who at times was annoying, at times was goldenrod that needed to be pulled along, other times needed to be shut up. You got one person to say, yeah, no. You are the answer. You know, you've built for this, and I believe in you. I'm your friend. I think it's powerful. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the power of it is the respect that, actually listening to 3PO, but also, like, nobody's forcing this on you, 3PO. We are asking this, but we are also asking, you know the odds. We don't have another way to do this, and you know that truth. So what do you want to choose, 3PO? Is such respect. And he could have said, screw it. It's been a good run. Take me home to R2.
Boba would have laughed. Yeah, screw it. Yeah, it would have been.
Yep.
Fun. Yeah. A couple of number one, you said Chopper. I would love young Chopper saves the day, some kind of one-off story of some fresh off the assembly line pilot who then goes through a lot. I mean, Chopper goes through everything, and I think that is a lot of what's there between him and R2, just why they are who they are. They've seen it all, and they remember it all, and they've adapted.
Yeah, I forgot that great moment when we first visit the Syndulla family home, and the Y-Wing that he crashed in during the Clone Wars is still there, and Chopper's just staring at it. And Sarah has to tell, I believe, Ezra, like, he's still got a lot of issues with that. Yeah. It's like, this poor little droid's living with trauma, Yeah.
It's serious stuff. It's fun stuff. It adds depth to. So yeah, I'd love to see more of that. Silly answer though. I also like the idea at some point one droid was too happy, and that got annoying, and so the Droids RS company started reacting to customer reviews and made more anxiety-ridden, depressed droids. Like, all right, this is what you want. This is what you get. You're gonna get this.
I think I'd rather have a droid who told me in the morning that they also had a bad night charging and their knee hurts also. I think I would prefer that to a droid who's like, another great morning. Here's your coffee. I would lose my mind.
Again, go to Douglas Adams, those automatic doors that are like, hello, welcome. Yeah, love it.
It is my pleasure to serve you today, right? Great stuff. Very fun and deep question, Jay. Thank you so much. Move on to our final question from Robert Meadows. Did you have more droid thoughts? Oh no, we better wrap it up here. I'll talk about droids all day. Which, by the way, 5 years ago, I don't think I would have been like, let me talk about droids all day. Yeah, no. I mean, there's some rewards to digging in, right? And there's been great droid storytelling in the last few years, I think. Indeed. So we're moving on to our final question from Robert Meadows. Robert says, greetings all. What do you think Qui-Gon would have thought of the Mortis gods? They offer a unique view of the Force and what true balance means. What say you? Ken, what say we? Let's start here with, I think we can definitely discuss, if Qui-Gon, when he was flesh and bone and still on this mortal plane of Star Wars, before he became one with the Force, if he had discovered and gone to Mortis, what he would think of it. We can definitely have that conversation. But I want to start with the Qui-Gon spirit question of the Mortis arc. So some of the visions that are seen in the Mortis arc are explicitly manipulations of the Son, of the character, the Son, right? That's not really Shmi, right? Qui-Gon, I think, is left open to interpretation. And we have that line later in the Yoda arc where Yoda has been hearing Qui-Gon's voice and is worried about it and asks Anakin, didn't you and Master Kenobi report that you saw Qui-Gon? And Anakin's like, yeah, but we just assumed that was, a vision born of Mortis because everybody knows Jedi or nobody talks to us from the beyond. So we assume that's what it was. So we have Anakin's take, which, part of which we know, obviously, that indeed people can retain their identity and talk to other people from beyond. But where do you land on your interpretation of Qui-Gon's spirit in Mortis? If that is truly Qui-Gon or if that is some representation of Qui-Gon conjured by Mortis? I especially, and this includes the Obi-Wan Kenobi series now, but I think especially the thing you're highlighting later on in the Clone Wars show itself, where the writing team and staff and Filoni and everyone kind of the fact they even revisited it, and not so shocking in it's Star Wars and it's the lore and all that stuff, but the fact that it's still like Yoda going,
hey, I got a question about that. I lean towards there was an actual part of Qui-Gon there, that it was not played for tricks with Kenobi. It's been a little bit since the Clone Wars report, so I don't remember his exact words. I should have watched that again this morning. But nothing comes off false and tricksy, right? With Kenobi?
No, there's nothing that I can remember that's false and tricksy. I think he's saying very sincere things about trying to guide Obi-Wan and trying to guide Anakin. I think his presence is very much like future Force spirits. And that personally is the way I lean, particularly because they're wrestling with it in that later Clone Wars arc with Yoda being like, this is impossible, right? And Anakin being like, yeah, it was outside of our scope of understanding, so we came up with this rationalization. Yeah. And I think it's a half-true rationalization that, like, obviously Qui-Gon is not able to fully physically appear before Yoda. Clearly the recipient of a discussion with the Force spirit needs to be in the right place, like we've seen demonstrated lots of places, but in the Kenobi show in particular. So I do think, like, the power of Mortis, its connection to the Force, it being a wellspring, a vergence, allowed Qui-Gon to fully appear. But I do feel like it is Qui-Gon. There's not, because there isn't anything tricksy about it.
And I got to tell you, I think at the time when the Mortis arc aired in the years after, I think I just went the way of Anakin. That was a lie. But then when you analyze it, like we did, but even now, it's definitely different energy than the Shmi vision, huh?
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ahsoka sees her future self, which feels like, not Mortis playing tricks on her, but you know, that Mortis conjures visions, presences. Maybe that's Ahsoka from the World Between Worlds. Who knows?
Yeah. Could be.
Yeah. And I like you said, it's been a little while since we covered it. There might be a Filoni quote out there saying, rubber stamp. Yes, no. I don't remember, but I like that idea. Okay. So with that out of the way, let's imagine, per Robert's question, Qui-Gon's zipping around the galaxy, trying his best to be aware of the living Force. What do you think his reaction to Mortis would be?
Here's what I wrote down. Oh my God. And I think you would have been in tune with it.
Look at those gods.
Look at those gods. I think you would have been in tune with it very fast. Even what Robert's saying here, it's, what true balance means and this unique view of the Force, but maybe more of I don't want to say pure vision, like this is the definitive version, but I think he would have been in tune with it. Right? Cosmic versus living, nighttime versus daytime, just what was going on Mortis. You got the son and daughter, but you got these beautiful days and these devastating nights, and they both existed in concert with each other. And the fact that there was just kind of no hang-ups by the father when it came to investigating the prophecy, Qui-Gon, his relationship to prophecies, Dooku's relationship to prophecies that changed over the years and the way it was kind of presented to younger Qui-Gon. I was refreshing my brain on some of the Rael Avaros conversations with the younger Qui-Gon going, what do you mean Dooku doesn't like prophecies? He was all about that stuff. And it's just kind of Qui-Gon's relationship with that. And then you have the Jedi Order's relationship with that. And just the fact that you have the father going, hey, I heard about that prophecy and that kid. Is that all good? I just think make it a general surface level kind of point here, but I think Qui-Gon would have been there for that and explored it. And I just think he just seems like the guy Qui-Gon was, like he would have been. Can you imagine Jinn and the father, Qui-Gon Jinn and the father having long walking talks? He was someone. Qui-Gon strove to follow the living Force. He's someone who used science, midichlorians, to confirm the spiritual about the prophecy of the Chosen One. And I think he just would have been mesmerized by what was going on there.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. OMG, look at this virgins. I think the word that jumped out to me is validated, right? I think Qui-Gon is concerned that the Jedi are getting rigid in their decision making, but that is coming from a rigidity of view of the Jedi ideal is to be in a state of questioning, and as you question things, you validate things that are true but are up for reexamination, or some things that you held to be true and were clinging to, or maybe we need to look at that from a different perspective now as we've learned more. Like the Jedi should be in some amount of questioning, right? Yeah. And I think Qui-Gon's in that place of like, I want to question our deepest understanding of the Force. And I think he's coming to this idea of like, the council has become rigid. They feel like they know everything, right? The Ki-Adi-Mundi's answer to everything is, no, we know about that. And in the, Mace Windu just being like, council said. And Qui-Gon, I think, being like, there are so many aspects to the Force, so many ways to look at it, so many beings who interact with it. So discovering these ancient beings who interacted with the Force so powerfully that their presence in the kind of galaxies we understand it was dangerous because they're so attuned with the Force that they went here and became a part of this vergence, which is kind of the backstory the Father gives. I think Qui-Gon would be like, see, and I bet there's a Bendu, and I bet there's a Blue Shaka that understands the Force in a way that we never could. That there's so much more. I think Qui-Gon would be quoting Luke from the trailer of Last Jedi. There's so much more, and this would be a validation of all of that.
Yeah, that validation, justification for a lot of things he was going through. I really love that angle too, and that's what's fast. Qui-Gon just continues to be one of the more fascinating characters, even as I get older. We said it on the show this week on the news and cues. This is the cues on the news. I go to Qui-Gon a lot more than I used to in '99 and beyond. We're just like, teach me, Qui-Gon. What have you learned? Because you don't know the answers. You're seeking, and I love that. And I think Mortis is about that.
Yeah, and I think really, to me, I know, some people love the phrase "Great Jedi," and I get it's an intriguing concept, but I love Qui-Gon from the perspective of like, no, I want to be very true to the core ideas of the Jedi, which are to continue to question things with wanting to learn more, with wanting to understand more, and I think that's. So what this is about. And if it was Qui-Gon, once he had encountered Anakin, I think the utter validation of like, oh yeah, no, he's totally the chosen one. This is real important. I think he would like that a lot.
Yeah, that Qui-Gon quote. It's funny. It's now the lead quote on Wikipedia on Qui-Gon's page. I don't think that was always there. I think it's important to Qui-Gon's existence. That quote that's from Master and Apprentice, the turn towards the light quote.
Oh yeah, it's so good, right? Yeah, and that's such pure Jedi, right? Of like, I'm not in a game to win some cosmic war. It's the light is where we should go, so I turn to it because it's right in and of itself. Yeah,
and then the son would be like, but no.
Yeah. Oh man, great stuff. Yeah, and I haven't finished Padawan by Kirsten White yet, but there's some great Qui-Gon stuff early in that book.
Yeah.
All right. Any further thoughts on Qui-Gon's mind being blown by the gods of Mortis?
Look, what I love about this is maybe we get an essay or something one point of the spirit of Qui-Gon arriving on Mortis at some point would be interesting.
Oh, yeah, man. If we get season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi that is just Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon chatting.
Oh, man.
That'd be amazing.
Hey, Qui-Gon, I got a question for you. Yes, that was me. Okay.
Was that you? Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Robert Meadows. That was a very fun question to explore. That's it for our questions, but we do have a power of the light side. Speaking of being like Qui-Gon and turning to the light simply because it is there and it is beautiful. That's what this power of the light side is about. We put out a call to patrons on Patreon to share something positive about Star Wars. Could be something, memory of seeing Star Wars with a loved one. It could be a favorite toy, or it could be how Star Wars has really helped you in a deep and important time in your moment. Our submission today is from Justin Jacobson. Justin says, for me, the power of the light side is in resisting the dark. I have never had a twin sons moment calling me off to some grand adventure, but my 30s and early 40s have been filled with times where giving into anger, resentment, bitterness, and frustration looked like a really good idea. It has given me a lot of empathy for characters like Maul, Dooku, Vader, and Kylo Ren, which in turn has opened me up to their stories as cautionary tales on why I shouldn't give in to those feelings. That is great, Justin. A literal answer to power of the light side. What is the power? Why are we drawn to it? Why do we want to celebrate it? What are your thoughts on this one, Ken?
This is, look, I love this one. And I really focus in on Maul, Dooku, Vader, Kylo Ren being cautionary tales, and I think they're very important to the story. And we see this a lot. Luthen Rail factors into this for me as well. Saw too. What's going on in Andor, and look, it's very personal. It's very real world. I think there's some real. There's a real place for anger. There's a real place for righteous anger. Anger is a starting point. Anger to cause change, anger to get the attention needed to cause change. And these are all conversations. And it's sometimes dangerous to make Star Wars so one-to-one to the world. I think that could be just as bad as ignoring Star Wars and the lessons on the real world. But this is all personal, too. I think I'm someone who is in a privileged position to be a little less angry. So therefore, I can look at a bigger picture. And this is maybe how you change some things. Other people aren't blessed with that privilege. They are in the situation. They are in the darkness, and that's a starting point. I just think Star Wars does want us to not stick there, and it's very easy. Resentment and bitterness are things I'm struggling along with, and those lead to frustration. It's that Yoda sliding scale, sliding down scale of everything leading. It continues to be one of my favorite quotes in Star Wars. And at the time, by the way, at the time, I think it was mocked a little bit in the prequels, at least sometimes some of my circles. It was mocked. I think it's important stuff, and I don't want anyone to confuse me that what you're going on in your life doesn't mean my answers are right for you. And I don't want anyone to toss away anger over anything that's gone away. I just think you look at all these, the Maul, the Dooku's, the Vaders, the Kylo Rens, all have reasons to be angry, all have reasons to make some decisions, but it doesn't turn out the way it could. There's some redemption in there, Anakin and Ben Solo, but it didn't have to necessarily be that way. Anyways, I'm getting deep into the real world one-on-one stuff here, but it's been on my mind. I've had a lot of conversations. That's what I do love about Luthen Rael. Luthen Rael and his speech has been taken so many different ways by people, and how you take it is how you take it. You and I take it maybe a little different than some of the other even friends of mine. His speech is motivating some people. His speech is a cautionary tale to me. But the point is, it's getting you thinking about what's going on inside your soul. And it's the other side of Star Wars. The dark side is there. It's always going to be there. And Star Wars has a lot of thoughts on how you deal with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Luthen's speech is so fascinating because, it's not done. It's a signpost on his journey. No, it'd be one thing if he had ended up not making it out of season 1, right? But I think that speech is going to mature like a fine aged cheese, and it's going to take on even more complexity as we see what Luthen's journey is and his own feelings about that speech. So, little Luthen side note is going to be more and more prevalent here on ForceCenter because such a fascinating character. I love what Justin is saying. I think in particular with characters like Maul and Dooku and Vader and Kylo Ren, it's so great to see the storytelling of seeing what's the wound, what hurt them, and how much can we relate to the pain. I think recently getting in both the Dooku Jedi Lost, but in particular in the Tales of the Jedi to see Dooku personally wounded, but also Dooku wounded by the true injustice of the Republic in the Jedi, of to have this power and to feel chained from using it when somebody with wealth and political protection is doing something that they can maybe get away with under the law, but is clearly immoral and painful. And for Dooku to be chained and to not do anything about it. It's got this societal wound, but then there's also this wound of like, well, what's the point of me? It's making me feel weak to just stand here and just go, I'm just an errand boy, So I've been thinking about that a lot because I think this is definitely Dooku Jedi Lost got into some of this stuff, from family and attachment perspective, but that's a real fresh look at some of the wounds. And to me, it's always important to start there with these dark side characters and say, okay, if I can relate to why they're so angry, what's the point where they make a choice where I say, I can't agree with that, and how they respond to that anger. And I think, or that wound. And I think that's the story that Star Wars always wants to tell. Fear and anger are natural emotions, and they can sometimes be productive, and you need to wrestle with them. And I take the lesson of Star Wars is be careful that you don't act on them in a way that is only going to make things worse for others and worse for yourself because it feels good and right in the moment of, I have been hurt, so I will lash out. I always relate to, the discussions of the dark side is it gives you focus, because I feel that when I'm angry. Like,
yes.
Oh, now my body is a crystal. I know exactly what is wrong, and I can express it exactly and with energy, nothing held back, and it feels great, right? Yeah. And it's always when I'm in those spots where if I don't stop myself, I go beyond that and I lash out and I hurt someone I don't want to hurt. I hurt physically something I don't want to hurt in my life, which only hurts myself ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
I'm a breaker of things. That goes back to being 2 or 3, which is little DNA, little nature, little nurture. A little bit, and I have to cop to that. A little bit of I am frustrated at this printer. Now this printer is out in the field, and I'm office spacing it. It's a little bit of a thing. Well said, sir, and what it is, and I find myself, especially with the Luthen stuff, but especially Star Wars in the last couple of years, there's a lot of things that could upset all of us. I think I find myself, I don't know if it's defensive or just, here's as simple as I can say it. With the Dooku Tales of the Jedi stuff, loved it. You and I loved it. I've had some conversations off air with people who are like, it was so nice to finally get his point of view. And I'm like, whoa, that's not the end of the story. Time out. We're not just going, finally we understand why he was, in terms of lore, maybe you do, but I think these are some folks who express it in that way of like, it was just that whole Empire point of view thing that we keep talking about, that Andor kind of, I think one of the things I love about Andor is rip that Band-Aid off the wound of the Empire and be like, oh, it's not just some dock workers on the Death Star who don't know what's going on. So I get a little hey, keep the story going and find it. And I love what you said about at what point on their journey did they do something that you go, aha, a bridge too far. And I think that's part of the thing there. Cause I never, especially with the world and citizen, never want to take anyone's anger away from stuff that they've experienced or has happened to them. And I don't think Star Wars is saying that too. It's just a complete journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's the nuance in what continues to make Star Wars fascinating. I think it's the nuance of why Luthen's speech is fascinating. The empire and the tyranny that we're presented with in Andor, in my opinion, must be fought, right?
Yes.
So that's why it becomes this question of if there comes a point where you feel like you have no other choice but to, resist in some way, how do you do it without losing your soul? Because that's what happens to the Darksiders, right? Yeah. They don't lash out and go, now finally somebody has heard my perspective. I've made somebody apologize. They lash out and it becomes their entire life and it's not productive. They don't get any of the things they want, Yeah. And that's the story of Maul, Dooku, Vader, Kylo Ren, they don't end up with the things they want. Anger doesn't get them what they want in the end, And I think for me, I think anger is natural. It's going to be there. I think just trying to deny it is not wise. It's how do you express it and find a way out of it? And I think it can absolutely be used to crystallize an epiphany that something needs to change, right? But how do you not live in misery as anger has opened the door and you're marching in the direction you need to, right? But then how do you not just live in that anger and perpetuate it everywhere you go?
It's one of the important conversations around Anakin and the failure of the Order, and maybe even some of the shortcomings of how Kenobi dealt with them that the saga still deals with. I've always, if he could have just talked to someone about being in love with Padme, could he have processed the attachments a little differently? Maybe. You don't know. And it's a space saga. It's going a certain way. Needs the characters to do decisions for the stories. But you know what I mean? You look at it, I think that's a big thing I've taken away from the Clone Wars rewatch on their Clone Wars report. He had to keep it all inside, suppress it. And that only grew until the one evil wizard knew how to pull out that string.
Yeah, no, and I think, when Obi-Wan says, I failed you, it's like, I knew you were wrestling with stuff with your past. I knew you were wrestling with feelings with Padme, and I didn't find a way to help you. Too little, too late. By the time he's in the bedroom with the pod racing poster going, I had feelings for Satine, and he's like, I don't want to talk about it,
Yeah.
I think that just, hearing Justin's great thoughts here is really, really healing for me. I had, personal stuff that I'm not really at liberty to get into at the end of the day, not a big deal, but I had like my worst brush with the dark side in a long time this last week. I was telling Ken a little bit about it off air. But it really made me think a lot about Star Wars, because I think I had a legitimate reason to be angry. Mm-hmm. And then I also knew, like, I know what long-term issues in myself that this is touching off. I was able to express them. I was able to vent them. And then I still couldn't stop being angry. Mm. And I'd done everything valuable with anger. It had opened me up. It had communicated. I had pushed back against something that I think was unfair. And then I was like really aware of it, because we talk about this all the time. It's like, but now it's just really feeling good to swear and be furious. And I couldn't. I was at that point where it's like, I can't stop. How am I going to stop? And I really had to just be like, okay, just let yourself be angry. Mm-hmm. Step away from anyone or anything that you can hurt, and just let it simmer. And eventually other parts of life came in, went out in the world and got some things done, saw some things that made me happy. And slowly, I finally calmed down. But I was at that exact point where, like, wouldn't it be good to just stay this way and keep lashing out? Mm-hmm. And I think that to me is the Star Wars story of, it feels so tempting to stay in that place of righteous fury. Mm-hmm. And then once you are in that place, like we see all the Darksiders do, then they have to lie to themselves that they're still justified. Yeah. In their actions, right? Yeah. Because when Anakin has that moment of doubt when what have I done, when he takes out Mace Windu, right? And he pivots immediately to justification of like, yep, you're right. I agree with you, Palpatine. The Jedi are going to kill all the senators. Yep, I agree. So I have to wipe them out first. He pivots immediately towards obviously BS justifications for the choice he's made, And I think that's the kind of danger when you anger feels good and you lead into it and you kind of know I'm not doing anything good, but you start to make up justifications for why it is okay that you're staying in that place of anger.
Quicker, easier, more seductive.
That's a shorter way.
Yeah, but isn't this how powerful those words are in 1980? Just still ring out true in Star Wars.
It is, man, and you and I talk about that. I did a sketch a long time ago called "The Power of the Funny," where it was just combining Star Wars stuff with comedy stuff, and that's what I've thought about comedy that way for a long time. There's some jokes that are not great, but you get a big laugh quicker, easier, seductive.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So thank you, Justin. Thank you for helping me reflect on my experiences this week in the value of turning to the light side. Any final thoughts, Ken?
No, I love it. Thanks, Justin. And look, let's be honest. We, over the years, have received a lot of nice messages and support from people out there who express what we talking about, our journey talking about Star Wars and celebrate Star Wars, what it means for you. But it's also a reminder that this is we're a community here, and a lot of times you guys ask questions that hit us right when we need to as real life people, not just Star Wars fans.
Yeah, and I also think that's good for us to touch base. We get comments about being a positive podcast and a supportive podcast, and that we want to. That's a choice. We are turning towards the light, but we are humans with many emotions from grumpy to anger, and we want to be honest that those are there too.
Indeed.
All right, that is our show. We had a great Power of the Light side. We had some great cues. Ken, where can people find us?
Well, speaking of that community, you can connect with us on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. At the time of this recording, Hive Social's still down somewhere, but we are on there at ForceCenter. If you find us, if it gets back up, Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. We're on Instagram as well, and YouTube, as we set up top of the show. Love to have you subscribe and join that community there. Podcast is available a lot of different spots. Just search, will find us. But we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and more. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter, patreon.com/ForceCenter, where you can support us directly. I say that so many times you'd think I wouldn't stumble. And you can find me at Ken Napzok, or go to my website, kennapzok.com, for more. Joseph, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on all the social media. Instagram, TikTok are great options. I'm on Mastodon. I'm on Hive. As of this recording, I'm on Twitter, but we'll see. You can also find me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joseph Scrimshaw. Or if you want to be real old school, you could go to my website at josephscrimshaw.com. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for C-3PO's anxiety, this has been Cues of the Force.